You guys know I always try my best to find a clear answer about stuff one way or the other, but I'm telling you now, when it comes to lasguns, there just isn't one. It's absolutely anything goes. It's just about the most inconsistent piece of tech and lore that I've researched in the 40k verse. There's no definitive answer, that's the bottom line.
Well, that's where we come in. We are going to calculate the recoil of a flashlight. Who knows, maybe Henry Cavill can include the real physics of the lasgun in, his movie and show. So let's go back and watch a little bit. He gives an introduction on the lasgun, so that could be useful. Let's have a quick watch at that, and then we'll get into the math.
It's a lasgun. Lasguns are one of the Imperium's core pieces of weaponry for its military. Not for the Space Marines, but its ordinary human soldiers.
By the way, I'm a big fan of Warhammer. I've thought about this for a long time. So I'm just kind of making videos on whatever I want these days. So today we're going to calculate the recoil, right? If you enjoy this video, make sure you like it, leave a comment, because I could also calculate like the effective range. If you guys are interested, I don't know if anyone's going to watch this video, so we'll see how it does, and I can do more if you guys want. But this is a very contentious thing within this sort of universe, so I felt like doing some math.
When it comes to lasguns, like so many things within the galaxy of M41, at face value things seem relatively clear and self-explanatory. In actuality, it's often not as clear as some of us might want to imagine. For example, while some sources will describe lasguns as laser weapons, just as many others, including combat descriptions, describe lasguns firing these explosive energy blasts with more similarity to perhaps that of the semi-automatic firing of a standard projectile weapon, but with a lasgun it's in some form of energy bullet or shell, whatever that means. In the novel 13th Legion, for example, the Last Chancers used the phrasing of lasgun bolts or las bolts quite heavily. Not an isolated reference, the description is seen elsewhere in Fist of Demetrius, Gaunt's Ghost, Company of Shadows, just to mention a few, many of the newer novels as well. So while you find technical descriptions of lasguns early on in lore sources speaking to specifically lasers, these decrease over time somewhat. It becomes more vague the more you go along. There's generally a more considerable weight of references to lasgun fire being described also as
It's a bit like Captain America though.
Bolts of energy or bolts of compressed light. The key thing either way being this phrasing of bolts rather than a laser, as well as the actual
compressed light. What are they referring to there? Like some kind of conformal squashing?
Dimensions of the beam. They're often describing them boring sizable chunks or holes into targets, whereas a laser beam is obviously quite something different to that, more specific, more to a point in the form of its energy. Still, observations are one thing, but when it comes to this talk of laser shells, I'm just going to hold my hands up. I've got nothing for you there. I tried to think around it.
All right, let's get into the video. So let's calculate the recoil of these things. And, I'll do some math. I'll explain some things we got it right now, do some math, see what it all says. So in Warhammer 40,000, the lasgun, affectionately known as the flashlight by tabletop players for its complete inability to damage anything, is the standard issue in the Imperium of man's military, but as almost useless against the mechanical and organic monstrosities that inhabit the Warhammer 40,000 universe. So the weapon itself is actually fairly simple. Like, it just fires a concentrated laser pulse at a target. So we're going to look at its effectiveness compared to modern day equivalents like the M16 assault rifle. In order to estimate the energy of the lasgun's laser, we're going to use an example from the Warhammer books. Right, so the lasgun is basically stated as being able to blow an unarmored human arms off at close range. We're going to make the assumption that close range means attenuation due to the atmosphere is negligible, right? And we're going to also assume that the energy needed to blow off a human arm is the amount required to vaporize all the water in the part of the arm hit by the laser. Make sure you come check out CalVPN, which is really why I dropped out of my PhD in physics. It's the first post-quantum VPN consumer version in the world. So this is our website. You can come download it here. There's a Windows, Apple, and a Linux version now. There's a 7-day free trial, 30-day money-back guarantee. By the way, this thing can literally protect you from powerful quantum computers. If you want to know why that's important, come have a read. I've written a lot on this website. Me and a couple friends have made this. We thought it's actually really needed right now, and I wanted to help. And we're about to launch our affiliate program where you guys can earn 30% commission on any referral you get. So come help us out. Come support your boy. I've had a lot of fun making this. I'm also about to launch an AI project called AI My Interior. So I'm still working on that, and I'll let you guys know when you can play with it. So the energy was calculated using the equations for heat capacity and the latent heat of vaporization. This is one up the top here. So change in E is basically the energy loss from the laser. R is the laser radius. Change in X is the estimated depth of the upper human arm. C is the heat capacity of water. LV is the latent heat of vaporization of water. And rho, the P-looking thing, is the density of water. Next, the proportion of the laser's energy absorbed was calculated using the radiative attenuation equation, which can actually be written with energies as energy is proportional to intensity, where E0 and I0 are initial energy and intensity respectively, right? And E and I are energy and intensity at change in X, right? And mu is the absorption coefficient. So then rearranging equation 2 and using the fact that E0 minus E equals, ow, I bit my tongue, change in E, gives an equation for the initial laser energy, right? E0. And by the way, that I said mu, that is that little U looking thing. Then using the equations for momentum and energy of photons and the non-relativistic momentum equation, we can actually get an equation for the recoil velocity of the lasgun, which is this little thing over here, where VR is the recoil velocity, C is the speed of light, M is the mass of a lasgun. So in order to calculate the lasgun's recoil, we had to make a few assumptions. To find the energy the beam had to lose to the arm in order to vaporize all water in it, we assumed that the arm was made up of 70% water, right? And we negated all other substances in the arm. We also assumed that the depth of a human upper arm is equal to about 0.14 meters, estimated for like a muscular male. The other values used for the equations are all listed here, right? C equals 4,184 joules per kilograms. We also used rho equals 1 kilogram per meter cubed. L equals 2.26 times 10 to the 6 joules per kilogram. Using all that, this gave a change in energy equals to 77.7 joules required to blow a human arm off, right? So equation 3 was then used to calculate the initial laser energy required to deposit this amount of energy into the arm. And in order to calculate that, the absorption coefficient of the lasgun's emitted wavelength had to be found, right? So, you know, there are sources that state the different laser colors for the lasgun. And the one we shall use is a red laser at about 750 nanometers based on the appearance of the lasgun's beam in the game Dawn of War 2. So water at that wavelength has an absorption coefficient mu equals 3 m to the minus 1. So using all that, that gives an initial laser energy of E0 equals 226 joules. Finally, we use equation 4 to determine the velocity of recoil of the lasgun, right? And to do that, we use the typical mass of a standard issue las gun, which is about 2.3 kilograms apparently. That gives a recoil velocity VR equals 3.2 times 10 to the negative 7 meters per second. So compared to modern weapons, like an assault rifle, the las gun would be an incredibly stable gun, because the M16 has a recoil velocity of 1.55 meters per second. So that, makes it only accurate for short bursts. Whereas the las gun, however, has, almost non-existent recoil velocity, which means that you could almost maintain perfect accuracy whilst, firing it continuously. However, its effectiveness in the 41st century would be pretty limited. Against an unarmed organism, it would be pretty effective. But when facing down, a load of orcs who have, a nasty habit of nailing a couple inches of solid cast iron plating to themselves, it would be almost useless. Metal and other armor would probably simply absorb the laser pulse. Maybe a small hole is possible. The laser is, it's unlikely to pass through due to the high melting point and latent heat of melting of cast iron, with enough energy to cause sufficient damage. And just to show this, I did a bonus quick little calculation. So using equation 1, right? The energy required for the las gun to melt through, a piece of metal 5 centimeters thick of cast iron with, C equals 460 joules per kilogram, a rho equals 7,800 kilogram per meter cubed, a change in T of 1200 degrees Celsius, and LM with about 126,000 joules per kilogram, you're looking at a change in energy of about 83,070 joules. So from all this, we can conclude that whilst the las gun would be a much more effective weapon against unarmored targets than the M16, it would be way less effective than any protected or, organisms or machines. An M16 might actually be able to pierce the metal plate. The las gun wouldn't penetrate even a thin sheet of metal, as we just showed. If you want to see a part 2 of this video where we calculate the effective range of the las gun, make sure you leave a comment, let me know if you want to see that. But anyway, I'll see you guys next time.